Hello everyone, I'm Christina at CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make this corset Kumihimo ring, and this is what it looks like. So what we have here is a Kumihimo braid made first of all with beads on the edges there, and then I've added this cord after to get this corset effect. So we get all these little X's going all the way across, and obviously this is the main feature of the ring. I then finished it off using macrame, so that's using square knots, so we have a full continuous ring like that, and it looks a little something like this on. So you have that Kumihimo braid with that corset effect as the main feature of it. And it's also really nice and comfortable to wear because obviously it's cord that we're using, so it's soft, which means it's comfortable and it'll mold to your finger. So originally I made a bracelet with this technique here that looks like this. So you can see it's the same technique, so you could easily make them to be a set. So if you want to wear them together as well. So I have a tutorial already for that bracelet if you're interested in that. It's going to be linked in the description box below. But what I also just want to mention about the ring here is the sizing. Now I've made this to fit me, but if you want more of an average size, you might want to make 1 or 2 less rounds of the beads there in the actual Kumihimo part of the braid. So when I go through that, just make 1 or 2 less rounds with beads, depending on what size that you need. But if you want to learn how to make this ring, then keep watching. So these are then the materials that I'll be using. Here I have my round Kumihimo disc, but you can use either the round or the square one, whatever you have handy, because this braid structure can be made on either of them. And then I have 2 different colours of the same cord, and this is 1mm satin cord. One of them is going to be used for the braid and the other one is going to be used after we've made the braid. And finally I'm using these round copper metal spacer beads for the edge of the braid, but you can use whichever ones you want to. Just make sure the beads that you do use, the holes are large enough to take 2 of the lengths of cord going through. So let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So then we need to cut some lengths of our cord, and what I have here is 8 lengths of my black cord of about 50 centimeters each, and these are the lengths we're going to use to make the braid with. And then what I've done is I've made sure all the ends are even and then gone in from one end about 20 centimeters and then tied just a regular knot to help hold them together, but also to know that that's the starting point. And then we need 2 lengths of the other colour of about 30 centimeters. So this is going to be used after we make the braid. So I then attach the cord for my braid onto my Kumihimo disc here. So what I've done is I've taken the knot there and put the shorter ends down through the hole in the centre of the disc. Then I have my knot right there in the middle. And then the longer ends I've distributed around the disc like this. So I've just put a cord on either side of the dots there all the way around. So we have pairs opposite each other. And then we just need to start our braid here with the longer ends. So the structure is, I'm going to take my top right one first of all, coming from that right one, going over towards the left and go into the slot below the pair that's on the left side here. So it's gone from the top right down to the bottom left on the side, and then the left one goes out to the right side and again below the pair on the side. Now the bottom ones kind of do the same but just opposite. So the right one on the bottom goes to the top slot above there on the left, and the left one goes to the right one again above the cords on the side. So that's the movements for the top and the bottom cords. Then we need to take the cords in the middle on the sides. So first I'm going to take the top one out of the 2 middle ones there on the left, bring that down so it goes, the top one comes down, and we need to stay on the left side of the disc here. So that means put it into the left slot right next to that dot there, and then the bottom one goes up and just sits right opposite it. And on the other side we do the same thing. So just take the top one, comes down, stays now on the right side of that dot. So when we take the bottom one on the side, bring that up, the top and the bottom cords are now basically sitting in the original position. But obviously you can see we have a gap now on either side, so all I'm going to do is bring these cords 1 slot closer to each other. So just move one at a time, 1 slot in towards that dot, and once we've done that on both sides, all the cords are now sat in the original position, and this is 1 full round. So what we want to do is just do a couple of rounds of this, not too many, just a few. So we just have a little section of braid, rather do a bit too much braid before we then start adding in the beads, because we can always undo some of it. So now that I've done a couple of rounds of the braid here, I'm now going to start the next round, but now I'm going to also start adding in beads. So just to start the round, it's the exact same way. So bring the top ones out to the side, crossing them over there, and then the bottom one's the same. And then it's on the side here we need to add the beads. So first of all I'm going to just take the top one on the side out of the two middle ones down, and then it's this bottom one out of those two where I actually want to add a bead to. So I'm just going to grab that and put it onto the end of my cord before I bring it up. And as I'm releasing it, just let it drop all the way down and make sure the bead goes in between the cords there on the side, so it kind of gets trapped underneath, and then bring it up like that. Same thing on the other side. Bring the top one down, and then the bottom one out of those middle two, we need to add our bead. And then as it's dropping down, make sure it goes down in between those two cords to then bring it up. And you can see you have those two beads sitting right there on the edge, and then close up the gaps on the side to then have completed another full round. And then it's the same technique as you can see. All we're doing is on one of the cords on either side, as we're moving it, we're just adding in that bead. So what we need to do now is continue the braid, but I'm going to be doing one round now without adding a bead, and then another round with a bead. So between each round with the beads, I'm going to do a round without. So it's one with, one without, one with, and one without. So now I kept going adding in the beads. Then we have a little short braid on the back of the disc here. So what I've ended up adding is 6 beads on each side, so that means 6 rounds with beads. And also what I just did after the last one, I just did another few rounds with just the cord, just like in the beginning there, just so we have that, because like I said, we can always undo a couple of them, rather have a bit too long of a braid on the ends. But then what we need to do is take this off of the disc. And to help do that, because obviously we want to do it securely so the braid doesn't come undone when we take it off, I'm going to be using one of these hair grips just to help hold the end of the braid together. So what I'm going to be doing before releasing any cords, I'm just going to slide this in under the cords going out on the side of the disc, but just right in over the very end of the braid, or something like that. You can always add another one if you need to, just for the security. Just gives a little bit extra hold, or something like that. And then I'm just going to release the cords, because then it's not going to come undone. Obviously it will come undone if you pull them off, but just kind of be gentle to make sure they don't fall off or get ripped off by accident. Release all the cords gently, and then I can take my disc away. You can see there they're sitting nice on the end, and the actual braid isn't coming undone now. And then we need to get our other lengths of cord out there with the other colour. And what I've also done is I've just singed the end and rolled between my fingers. So just to get a little bit of a needle, it's going to be much easier to get these than through the beads, because obviously we already have cord going through. So you can do this if you're using a synthetic cord like me. Otherwise you can stiffen the end using something like nail polish or glue or whatever you have handy, really, just to make it easier to get through. And then I take my braid, because then we need to make these little X's between the beads. So I'm just going to start with one of these lengths of the extra cord. So you can see making that little needle on the cord really helps make it go through the bead easier. And then pull it through here. Now I'm just going to leave a short little tail down here, because obviously we need to also secure this cord off. And then the other length goes through the bead on the other side, right opposite it. Just getting it through. We can just find the pair through the bead, there we go. And then pull that up to the same level. So we have an even tail there on either side. So now we have the 2 cords attached. Then we need to start doing the crossover pattern. So I'm just going to, in my case, take the right one first. It doesn't matter which one you start with. Then I'm going through and coming out of the first bead. I'm going to jump to the other side and go through the second bead on this side. And then pull it through here so it tightens up the cord. But don't pull it too tight. Now we're getting closer. Just pull it so it lays nicely and flat, so we don't have too much spare and excess cord there, but also don't pull it too tight, because that can maybe pull the braid a little bit out of shape. So Once I've taken the right one to the left, then I'm going to take the left one from the first bead over to the right side, and then also crossing over. So this is going to cross over the first one and going through the second bead in this case, and pull it all the way through. So it's going to sit just the same, but now crossing over where the other one then crosses under, and you get your first little X. And then all we're going to do now is repeat. So what you just got to make sure of is that you start with the same side every time, just to make it nice and even and consistent. So again, I'm going to take the right one, crosses over to the left and goes through the next empty bead, if you can call it empty. Obviously it's in the braid, but it's empty from these cords yet. Cross it over and pull it through. So we have that crossing over the braid like this, and pull it so it's about the same tension every time. And then the right one goes over that and then crosses through the next empty bead on the opposite side of it. And then again pull that so we get the X. Like that. So just do that all the way up until the very last bead at the top. So once I've then gone through all the beads, it looks a little something like this. So you can see we get those little X's between the beads because of the different coloured cord, so it stands out more. But then what I'm going to do is take this and attach it to my mini macrame board. So I have that here, and I'm going to attach it here just because it's easier to work with, and we're going to be finishing this off using macrame, so to be able to get a complete ring. So for now I'm just leaving that knot there, the original knot that we made, just because we're going to do one side at a time to begin with. So you just might as well leave that until we get to that side. I'm going to start with this one that's already open. So I'm attaching the top and the bottom then slots directly opposite each other. So then it sits like this. So then what we're going to be doing is using square knots to finish off the ends here and connecting the ring as well. And what I just want to do first of all is remove one of these hair grips, like that, and then also so we can just kind of get it in the right place. I want to just push it up a bit. I don't want this big of a gap, you could say, from the last bead until when I'm going to start the knots. So that's, like I said as well, rather do a bit too much of the braid because we can always undo it, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So I just pushed it up a bit, then I just want to release all of these cords that are coming out of the braid, and then just undo this little bit right underneath that hair grip. So we obviously have the braid not coming quite as far down. Something like that. Then what I'm going to do while I have them free like this anyway, just looking at the different cords here, I have two that kind of naturally going a bit more to the side, so I'm going to keep those two like that. The rest of them I'm going to put back in the same slot. So these are for now going to be holding cords for the macrame knots, and then these two that I've put out to the side are going to be the working cords that we're going to be using to make the square knots with. But we also have these cords left over, the ends of the other colour that we used to make the little X's with. So obviously we don't just want them hanging free, so I'm going to bring them in with the holding cords. They're a bit short, but we're just going to make kind of a couple of knots here, and then we're going to also start getting rid of cords because this is way too many that we can also finish them off. So to secure it all, I'm just going to take the two holding cords and make my square knot. So I'm going to take the left one first of all. It doesn't matter if you start with the left or the right side, it's completely depends on what's natural to you. But then the right one goes over the left one that we brought over first, and then underneath everything in the middle. And remember those two extra cords, the short ends there, they're going to need to be trapped in with the knots as well. And then up through the loop on the other side, and then tighten this up. And I like to kind of hold and keep these extra cords that we made the X's with a little bit to the side or towards the back of the other ones, if you can, just to hide them as much as possible. It's going to be hidden within the knots, but obviously in case a little bit sticks out, it is a different colour, just in case a little bit of it is showing through. So that's the first half of a square knot, and then to do the other half, I'm going to start with the other side, like that, and then tighten that, and then that's one full square knot. Now what we can actually do now is take the other grip off, and you can see it's not going to come undone because that knot is now holding it all in place. I just wanted to have a look at these. If you feel like this cord where it's coming out from the bead is a little bit too loose, you can see too much, you can just pull at it just a little bit to hide it more. You can see it kind of pulls in behind the rest there. So that's hiding it nicer and kind of blending in nicely as well. So what we need to do now is also get to a point, like I said, where we actually need to start getting rid of all, or some of these cords rather. We just need to end up having one where we're then going to connect it. So to help with that as well, I'm going to be using a bit of glue just to make it extra secure. This is just a GS Hypo Cement. I'm using this because it's clear and it dries clear, so you won't really be able to see it, even if a little bit seeps out, but also it has a really fine applicator tip that I can then use to add just where I want the glue to go, because we don't need too much, we just kind of need it. I'm putting it below the knot that we made, but around all the holding cords, like this. So like I said, it doesn't have to be too much, just a nice little coating around all of them. And then while that glue is still wet, I'm going to make another knot, again around all the cords. So you tighten it here, you end up tightening the knot on top of that glue. So obviously when the glue eventually dries, it's going to actually be inside of the knot. So it's going to be nicely hidden as well mostly. Like I said, a little bit can seep out, but it's not going to be too bad. So just like that, and that's also now going to secure all of those holding cords within that knot there. And then what I want to do is get out a pair of scissors, because I need to now cut off some of these holding cords, because like I said, we have to get rid of some. I'm going to do a few at a time while we're making knots. So just kind of pick out two first of all, and I like to kind of go a bit towards the middle to begin with. But then I'm going to take these two here and then just tighten that one back up that I got loose a bit. If I can find which one that is. Seems to have disappeared. There we go. So now I've loosened two there, coming from more towards the middle. Whether it's the front or the back, it doesn't really matter. Then what I'm going to do is go underneath that last knot that we made with my scissors and cut them off. Now what you want to try and do is, you can try and cut them off as close as you can, but you could also just leave a tiny little end, because you're probably going to have to do that anyway. The scissors usually can't get right close to the knot, so you have maybe 1 to 2 millimeters there. Then we need to add some more glue before we make the next knot. I'm going to just get my glue out, add it around just the ends of those little cords that I just cut off, but also around the rest of the holding cords, because obviously, like I said, we're going to have to get rid of more. So the process that I just showed you, we're going to be doing again. So that's why I'm adding glue to this knot as well. And then we just got to make another square knot, making sure obviously that this now gets tightened on top of the glue, but also because we have those short little ends, I just need to make sure, if I just tighten it like this, it might push them out in between the knots a bit. So I'm just going to make sure this cord on the knot there lies on top of them, because that then really hides them. And then the other half. And there we go. So we basically just need to continue this until we're left with only the two working cords there, and then one holding cord in the middle. So just make a square knot like I showed you, and then in the process there, get rid of 1 to 2 cords per knot, because obviously it's going to be uneven. The last knot you make, you might just be one cord you need to get rid of. I'm probably going to be doing these two other coloured ones next, just to get rid of them because they're short tails. But just remember to do them as well. So the cord that we end up with has got to be one of the originals there. And then once you've done that and you're left with just the one holding cord and the two working cords, obviously you need to flip this around and do this exact same thing on the other side as well. So now that I've done both ends and I have my little piece here, then what we need to do is basically connect the two ends together so we can get a continuous ring band. So I'm just going to bring the ends together here, so they're facing each other, and then the two holding cords are going to be crossing over like that next to each other. so coming towards each other there. And what I'm going to do is just work on one side at a time. We're going to be doing the same on both sides. So I'm just going to hold onto it here. It can be a bit fiddly because obviously it's kind of loose and the cords are going a little bit all over the place. But once we've got the first knot in place, it does become a lot easier already. Then what I like to do is I'm going to make sure that this holding cord that's coming from the opposite side is actually crossing over here but going underneath the working cords. And then just going to give myself a bit of space. We need to make a square knot around both of these holding cords now. So just the same knot that we were doing before, and this is what I said can be kind of a bit fiddly. I'm going to bring the left one over and then the right one over that, and then when I go underneath the cords, the holding cords there, it just means going through the ring band and then up through that loop on the other side, and then we can tighten this, which is then going to be the first half of our square knot. Don't worry too much about the sizing or anything now because we can always adjust that. Tighten this all the way up underneath the last knot that we have on this side, and then make the other half of that square knot to make it a complete one. So just go from the other side first and then tighten this right below. And then you can see here on this side we have this holding cord that we brought around is coming out on the inside of the ring band in between two knots there. So that's what that looks like. It's a lot more secure now already, but on the other side we still have one loose holding cord. So I just want to also secure that before I kind of move on here. So just do the same thing, bring this underneath the holding cords and then hold on to them. Make your square knot around here, and what you just have to pay attention to is what direction to also make the knots in. So what side you need to start with. To always make sure it's continuous. Again, just go through the ring band, and before tightening that I just make sure that the two holding cords here are lying flat next to each other and not kind of crossing over and under each other. And then tighten it to then do the other half of it like that. And then we have both sides in the same position. So you can see we now have these kind of loose holding cords in the middle. So what we need to do now is also figure out the sizing of this. You want to always make sure you kind of get the right size. So to do that, you can either measure against the ring band or just your own finger. What I would say is tighten this now. I'd rather make too few knots rather than too many. So I'd rather measure it kind of as I go. You can always measure it now and then kind of bring it together there. See how close the ends are together and if you need to make any more knots. Because what we're then going to do is just grab the two holding cords here that are coming out from the inside of the ring band, one on either side. And then the way that you tighten this, once you've made enough knots, is pulling at them through the knots. So you can see they become tighter there. So basically you just got to make enough knots on either side, continue with the same working cords, and then you pull them close together once you have the right size. And you can see it's as simple as that. And once you've done that, you have the right size and everything is in order, all that's going to be left to do is finish off all of the excess cord here. So now that I got to the point here where I just need to finish off the ends of the cord, I'm going to be using a lighter to singe the ends off because it's going to be nice and secure and also kind of blend in nicely. I can do this because I'm using a synthetic cord. If you're using a natural cord of some sort, you're going to have to use glue to kind of just put around the ends where they're coming out and then cut off the excess. But like I said, I'm going to just singe them. So I'm just going to show you on some of them because it's the same. Just separate them out there. Cut off the excess so you have just a short little tail left where the cord is coming out from. Something like that. And then I'm going to get my lighter. Obviously be careful because it does get hot. It's a naked flame. So just be careful with that. So I singe it down, that little end I had left, and then I just press it in. You can also use the actual lighter to press it in with. But I do like to kind of at least just, as a final one, press it in because it gets the shape better. Whereas this is kind of a hard edge almost. So it's going to make it a little bit less of a nice shape. Obviously it's the same with all the other cords here that were the working cords. Then what we also have are the holding cords on the inside, but honestly that's exactly the same. It's just obviously a little bit harder to get to. Again, you just cut down the excess. And then you just want to singe it down, get the other ones out of the way while you're working on that one. And then just also press that in. And especially this one, you want to make sure as well that you press it in nicely, because obviously this is going to be against your finger when you're wearing it, so you don't want to be able to feel any hard edges or anything. So just finish all of them off in this way. So once I then got rid of all the cords, then my ring looks a little something like this. So you can see here the main feature of the ring is that Kumihimo braid with the beads and then the excess that we added in after. And then we connected the whole thing and made it into a ring using macrame. And you can make it customized completely to what size you want, and obviously depending on what materials that you use will also make it look completely different. And this is what it can look like on. So you get that really nice feature of the Kumihimo braid right there at the front. So that's what it looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial for this ring here. I have loads of other tutorials both for rings, for Kumihimo, and loads of other mediums as well on my channel. So feel free to check that out. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this one for this ring. And thank you very much for watching.